You are in the Entrepreneurs Personal Branding and Company Identity session room. If you're in the wrong room, everybody wants to be here. Terrific. Thank you for all of your bright and smiling faces. It's great to see you. The first thing that we'd like to do is to find out who's in the room, and then we're going to do some self-introductions. So if you can let me know here who is working for an agency, by a show of hands. Who is an entrepreneur? All right. Maybe it's because the name of the session has entrepreneur in it. You are a talent. In other words, you're appearing on TV, you're an actor, you're a singer. You can also do these things at the same time you're doing other things. Okay. So this session is we're going to talk a lot about personal branding and why you need that, as well as your company identity and getting started. We're going to go through the self-introductions first. And in the self-introductions, I have asked each of the speakers to include the passion and purpose of why they got started with what they're doing. So that will be included in their 2-minute introductions. And if we can start right here with Kate.
Hi, I'm Kate Nelligan. Welcome, everyone.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. Yeah. Even though their Twitter names are all written on their cards, I'm going to ask them to say it just to make sure that you get their Twitter names.
My Twitter is @mindfulmedia and ENT. So I am the founder of Synergy TV Network and a life and career coach. And I'll just tell you briefly kind of how I came to be those two things through passion and purpose. I was working at Lionsgate for many years, and I've been in entertainment for over a decade. And I was selling a lot of horror movies, and it was my dream in my mid-20s. But when I hit my early 30s, realized I needed to be doing something that was more in alignment with who I really am. And I love entertainment, and I love that it can tell stories, but I wanted to use story to uplift humanity and to raise consciousness, because I feel like that's why I'm here. It's part of my purpose. And I was getting my master's degree in spiritual psychology at the time, and this was just not in alignment with selling horror movies for me. So I decided to leave and become an entrepreneur, which at the time was really scary because I had to take that leap of faith that you hear about quite often. And Synergy TV is actually a channel that I started on the side while I was actually still working at Lionsgate, and it's a couple hundred videos that are curated best of web that have the intention to entertain, enlighten, and inspire. So we uplift through stories that mirror a better world. And I also, because of this kind of passion to inspire, I also realized the best way for me to do that on a one-to-one level is to be a coach. And so I'm a career coach and a life coach. My master's degree really set me up well to do that. And my favorite way to coach is actually using horses on the ground in equine therapy, equine coaching, and working with people for them to really see sort of their shadow self as well as the light inside, and to move through any issues in that way. So it works with everything from trust to leadership, and I work with corporate groups and individuals that way too. So really, passion and purpose for me is to be helpful and inspiring.
Thank you, Kate. Kirsty?
Hi, I'm Kirsty Spraggan from Kirsty TV. Twitter handle is @KirstyTV. So Kirsty TV is really about sharing stories. I believe that when we share our own story, it heals ourselves and it heals others. So we have people sharing stories from entrepreneurial journeys like yourselves to addiction, human trafficking, depression, and everything in between. And people will often say to me, oh my gosh, those are such heavy topics. And the reality is that statistically, we know that it's 1 in 3. So 1 in 3 of everyone in this room has some kind of secret shame or guilt that they don't want the whole rest of the world to know, or some of us that do. And that usually holds us back in some shape or form. So I delivered a talk at TEDx called You're Only as Sick as Your Secrets, which is really around the freedom that comes when we're willing to let go of that shame and guilt. I began this journey in a very unusual way in real estate, so completely unrelated. My father had been in real estate. It was a family thing. I got in and out of sales from 17 to 27, traveled to over 40 countries, started back in sales at 27, was ranked in the top 1% of 120,000 salespeople worldwide, had an incredible career, wrote a book, and became a motivational speaker. So I now continue to work with sales organizations all over the world, speaking and writing, and started really focusing on the show when I moved to the States just under 3 years ago. And the first 3 months it took to get 1,000 views, and we now get 1,000 a day. So when you start, as any entrepreneur knows, it feels really exhausting and tiring, and I'm really proud of where we've gotten to today with the show, and I'm excited to see where it continues to go.
Thank you, Christy. Deborah.
Good morning. My name is Deborah Fine, and I'm CEO of I Have a Dream. I Have a Dream is a not-for-profit, and we go into the most at-risk schools and we adopt third grade classes, and then we are with them in the class and in school through high school, and then give them college scholarships. So I just joined that organization about 3 months ago. Before that, I had started Fine Line Foundation because I'd been shot a little over a year ago now, in the Santa Monica College shootings, and was very involved in trauma work and helping others, and had been throughout my entire career. And early in my career, I believed that I needed to be the CEO of a very large company in order to have power, and that's kind of the way I went, or to try to go, and realized that I love being an entrepreneur, started a couple of companies, and then my passion for helping other people and the creative side of writing and singing and speaking and all of those things that I'd put to the side when I thought it was so important to be CEO of XXX, I was able to kind of bring them together now, and do what I really believe in, which is helping this, not-for-profit, but also writing and singing and helping others as much as I can. I'm on several boards. I'm on the Maple Center board because, again, after I was shot, I realized we needed to get in front of the problem, which is to help people before they have a psychotic break or something else. And so for $8, you can go in and get counseling. You can get help. And then on the other front, of course, I Have a Dream, which is going in and giving kids hope so that they can see a light at the end of the tunnel. So I would say it's been challenging and looks very eclectic. But if you really follow the thread, it's about children and kids, whether it was Disney that I was at or the nonprofit now, it's always been about helping kids.
Thank you, Deborah. Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie Spira. My Twitter handle is @JulieSpira. I'm happy to be here. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started my career in broadcasting, actually on the air, and went into network radio where I was an executive. And life just got really busy for me. And one day after taking a bit of a leave of absence, I would say, I took a leave of absence after the internet company I was working for was sold. I ended up starting 2 businesses. One is Social Media and More. It's a social media marketing and branding company. I create personalities and brands on the web. And the other one, which is my big passion project, is Cyber Dating Expert. And Cyber Dating Expert helps singles find love on the internet. And being an early technology enthusiast, and certainly in the industry a long time, I started my digital career, let's just say about 30 years ago. There was really actually digital then. When I was at RKO, we were the first digitally delivered satellite radio network. So when I started Cyber Dating Expert, the reason it was my passion project is because I was just a girl who got her heart broken. And I could have been any girl. I could have been any one of you in the room, any one of you watching this webcast, but it was me and it was real painful. So I decided that I was going to take my technology savvy as an early adopter of the internet and an early adopter of online dating, and I was going to create a profile, and I was going to replace the former love of my life with a new internet mate. So that has been quite a journey. I wrote a book about it, and I ended up really turning what I felt lemons into digital lemonade. And it's been my passion to help other singles. I coach them one-on-one, I coach in groups, I speak, I do a lot of media, and I just want people to sort of not struggle through the process.
Fantastic. Liz, please. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Liz Heller, at Liz Heller. It's my Twitter handle. And just listening to everybody, I was kind of thinking about the journey that I've been on and the many paths I've taken. So I guess now, if somebody said to me the other day, many pivots. And I'm really, I think also my parents, my father was a personal manager who managed many incredible artists through his entire career, like Liberace and Debbie Reynolds and lots of wonderful, amazing people. And my mother has been a lifelong women and consumer rights activist. So I think I am a combination of those two and always really thought about how do I combine the importance of these two things and my interests. So I was in entertainment for a long time. I did a lot of music videos and then went on to make movies, and I was really part of the music world. And I realized that, there was huge transition, and I was first digital media kind of executive at a record company, really just because I wanted to work in the digital space, but there wasn't really a position. So they made one for me, and that was fabulous because I got to work with a lot of brands and partners that were outside of the entertainment industry. And I realized that that was super important, for me. And I was sort of kind of thought, well, I kept working on all these projects on the side that were really the things that I was passionate about. So I had a health and wellness shop, and I had an art gallery, and all these things that were sort of the hobbies and the passions. And I decided that I really wanted to try to marry those with the things that I had learned, which had to do with being resourceful and not having a lot of income, and how do I start something from scratch? And so that kind of took me into the entrepreneurial space and sort of channeling my father, I think, being of service to people and clients. And so I built this marketing company, and I've worked with a lot of companies since that really combine mission and business, like Tom's. And I'm currently working with a company called Revisit, a really incredible woman who started something she calls the quarterback model. And she gives 25% of her profits to support the national parks, but she makes beautiful handmade products that are made in the USA. And so it's been a really great opportunity to combine those, and advising companies like Smarty Pants and who give vitamins to people for all the every vitamin that you take and things like that. So I've been on this kind of interesting journey. I've ended up in this space where I finally decided, okay, I'm just going to call myself an alchemist, and I'm going to define this as adventures in modern alchemy. So I really try to work with people and ideas and companies to sort of spark game-changing ideas, and hopefully the companies matter. And for me, that also ties into women and personal impact, because I think that really matters.
Thank you, Liz. Dawn, please.
Hi, I'm Dawn Nadeau. I'm the co-founder of I Am Elemental Toys. Our handle is at I Am Elemental Toy. And we have a company that makes action figures for girls. I started the company 2 years ago. Before that, I was in media. I was on the original team at Fast Company magazine, and I was at Fortune magazine and at Goldman Sachs. But like many of these women up here, what I realized was that I wanted to do something that was my own and that spoke to my passion. And I'm very passionate about the power of play. I think that the stories we tell ourselves as children have incredible impact for the people we become later in life. And I'm also very passionate about the stories that girls and boys tell themselves about the role that women and girls can have in changing the world. So we started I Am Elemental Toy, which are action figures that don't have huge boobs and tiny waists. We call them more heroin than Hooters. We launched on Kickstarter. And we were fully funded in 2 days, and we closed at 465% funded. We were one of the more successful Kickstarter launches. And we got an incredible amount of press and buzz, which really proved our hypothesis. And so we're in production now on our first line. They're available for pre-order, and they'll be hitting stores in December.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm going to give my introduction now. My Twitter is here at Linda Sherman. You can also find me pretty much everywhere on the web at Linda Sherman, except for Pinterest, which is Kawaii Marketing. I spent 21 years in Japan, where I set up Coors Japan. I ran Club Med. I ran Gorilla Japan. I really had a lot of fun in Japan. And I had a big success with Zima, which was a big force behind my personal brand. If you don't remember Zima, the clear sparkling beverage, we were able to reposition it in Japan to be sexy and trendy and very profitable and successful there.
College days.
And the name of my company is the Courage Group, and it started out with needing courage to do business in Japan. We started up this business towards the end of the 21 years that we were in Japan. I am partners with my wonderful husband here, who's sitting and supports me in everything that I do, is sitting in the front row here, Ray Gordon. And this name is still very, very true for me now, doing personal branding. We build websites, we do videos, we do a lot of things that bring people into areas where they need courage. And so I chose this card from I Am Elemental Toys from Dawn. Thank you very much. So my I Am Bravery, which fits very well with Courage Group. So one of the main themes that we're going to talk about here is personal branding. And as an entrepreneur, I want to point out to you that the identity of your company is extremely important, but your personal brand is also very important. And why is it important? When you're looking to get funding, people look at who is the founder of the company, who's in the management of the company. If you're trying to sell a book or you're trying to sell a story idea for a TV show, people want to know what your following is. Have you taken the time to build up a social media following, which is part of your personal brand, so that whatever you do, you have a built-in following? So those elements, and it's not just social media. Social media is very important, but there's connecting different ways, and we're going to talk about those specific ways and give you tips about that. But what you can bring to the party makes such a difference in what you can accomplish. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is networking. And Deborah has a couple of networking opportunities that she's able to do because she belongs to a couple of private organizations. And I think in everybody's life, there are these opportunities of special networking groups besides the other things that you can get to. So I'd like Deborah to talk about that first.
Absolutely. One of the networks that I've been lucky enough and blessed enough to become a part of is YPO, Young Presidents Organization. And that is for CEOs who have companies that are at a certain level and the CEOs are a certain age, under a certain age. And I was able to join when I was CEO of my toy company about 10 years ago. And it's just been wonderful. It's CEOs from all over the world. And what I think has come out of that, besides being in a chapter, in and around Santa Monica, is that I decided that I wanted to get a little bit more personally involved in it. And there are about 80% men, 20% women in YPO. And that's just the way it is, whether it's, anyway, it just is. So actually, we have in the room Cynthia Cleveland, a very good friend of mine, who is chairperson, I say person, chairperson for the WIN Network, which is Women in YPO. And I have to say, when we get together, we really help each other. So it's, you need this, I need that, what can I do? And it's been delightful to find out that women are absolutely helping women and very happy for them. So that's been wonderful. And then there's so many other organizations, though, that you don't have to, hit a certain marker to be in necessarily, such as NABO, and that's for women here in LA. There's also EO, which is Entrepreneur or Executive Organization, and that's a different criteria, so you don't have to be at a certain level and a certain revenue mark in a company. And then on the non-exclusive side, not exclusive, I find LinkedIn to be fantastic. I really do. I started out right when, LinkedIn started in, and I have about, I would say, 1,200 direct connections and then probably 14,000 overall. So that means CEOs, media people, just all kinds of people all over the world. And I found with that one, I keep it professional, interesting, things that people would want to read about and more on the business side. And then, of course, there are all the different social networks like Digital Media Network on LinkedIn and other specialties. But networking has been very
Okay.
important.
So we'll come back to online networking. So we're coming back to offline networking. Dawn, that has been something that's been very important for you in making connections. Can you talk about that for a
Sure.
moment?
It's been incredibly valuable. I think the power of connection one-to-one is so important, particularly if you want to start something new or do something new, and being able to tap into a network. And I always say somebody knows someone who knows someone, and you start by asking questions. And I feel that being an entrepreneur is like getting dressed in the dark every single day. And you're just kind of hoping that you don't walk outside of the room with your skirt tucked in your underwear. And so being able to find people to ask questions and unravel the threads to get where you want to go is incredibly important. So when I started moving into manufacturing toys and I knew nothing, I just started asking people who knew people who did that, and had a lot of conversations. And the reason I think that was successful is because I had put the time in through the entire course of my career when I was at Fast Company and Fortune and Goldman, being generous with my time. So whenever anybody would ask me anything or wanted to talk on the phone or wanted to meet for a coffee, I've always tried to do that just because I believe in karma, and I think what you put out in the world comes back to you. And I think that there is a currency in help and in generosity. And if you trade in that currency very regularly, it will come back. So always take the time to meet with somebody, connect with someone, and generally try and help them. And if I can't help them, I try and find somebody who can. And sometimes that help is just one connection. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to write your business plan for you. It can be, I'm going to connect you to one more person who I think might help you. And that is incredibly powerful. But I've also learned over time, spending many, many, many hours in conferences like this. And when I was at Fortune, I was very involved in the Fortune Most Powerful Women Summit. And at Fast Company, I ran our live events division, and we launched a series of events called Real Time, is the power of the introverts. So sometimes events can be intimidating to really make meaningful connections to. And I often say to people, don't forget the introverts, the wall huggers, the people lurking around the crudité, because everybody, I know so many creative types. I know so many writers. I know so many designers, artists who just aren't great at working a room. And sometimes the people who are in the middle of the room having loud, meaningful conversations look like the life of the party are people who are in sales or marketing, and it comes very naturally to them. And you can find some really interesting connections through the people who aren't kind of naturally drawing people to them, but you can have a very meaningful connection. And so don't overlook the introverts. It's another one of my tips.
Kirsty, can you talk about who you show up as part of this offline networking?
Yeah, I mean, networking is one of the topics that I speak on regularly. And I think that what people often overlook is, in terms of personal branding and networking, it's who you are being. We do business with people we like. We do business with people we like. So if you're not likable, if you're annoying, if you're showing up with like stuff all over your shirt or your hair's a mess, like people notice these things. And I know we don't always like to talk about that, but it's like, it's a reality. So look at how you're showing up, who you're being, even just in terms of like being your word. If you say you're going to do something, follow up. Otherwise, don't say it. If you take 1,000 business cards, take them to follow up. Like the amount of people I meet at conferences who I never hear back from, it's like, why did they bother taking a card? So if you're going to go to all that expense of showing up at an event, of working the room, of getting to know people, do something with that when you're leaving. The other thing is, in terms of what Dawn was saying about unraveling that thread, don't think of networking as just being about the dollars, because initially networking is about putting deposits in your future bank account. So those early conversations might not convert or seem tangible for quite some time. It can be 9 to 18 months before they convert to business, or they may never convert at all. But I have clients who I've had relationships with for 5 and 10 years, and we have referred each other hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of business, but we've never actually bought or sold anything directly off each other. So someone that you meet may not be the end client, but they may be a great referrer, or they may be a great mentor or an introducer or referring partner of some kind.
Thank you. Liz is very deeply involved with conferences, and I wanted you to talk about the advantages of conferences for a moment.
And I just wanted to quickly say a few things. Everybody said such great things. And I think one of the things about a network or being a part of even a private network is, and one of the great things about YPO that people have said is that they always felt like they had somebody that had their back. And so if you're not part of one of those, it's super easy to create one. And I recommend it for everybody. Even if it's your own private network of your own group of friends, and that you can support each other and know that you're really there for each other is super helpful. And that also ties into the many different kinds of conferences that I attend. And I think sometimes I feel like I'm a bit of a conference junkie, but I try to have a strategy about it. And I work in a kind of couple of different spaces. One is I think it's super important to go to a conference that you can afford, because a lot of them can be very expensive. So there's a lot of different levels of them that has to do with yourself, just your own personal inspiration or thought leadership, something that's going to open your mind. And it might be about something that you really had no idea was going to be interesting to you, but because you are there, you're going to meet people from different fields that will know somebody who knows somebody, but also really help you just think about your life and where you're at and where you might be going from that. I think it's important to go, of course, to topic-specific conferences, but it's good to step out and maybe go to something that you don't necessarily think you're going to be doing every day, but it's part of your business, so it's a critical business driver, but it's not one that you think you need to know, because the more you know about that, the more you can help your own team, build your own company, feel how you can apply it. You might meet people there that will help you with that particular thing that might be a weakness, at least that way. So opening yourself up to that kind of knowledge, I think, is helpful. And I think it's important to kind of stay ahead. So I choose a conference every year that has really something I think is going to be important. So a few years ago, it was any kind of virtual currency, Bitcoin. Women are not involved in this. I think it's super important that they do become involved in virtual currency. We spend most of the currency, for better or for worse. But, and so just going there, I was probably one of 2 women at this conference. And a lot of it was like, wow, that's not something I'd ever do. But that wasn't the point. Part of it was to be able to synergize and to look forward to see what I could apply to it. And would I take currency if I was recommending an e-commerce business, et cetera, et cetera. So those are just a couple of thoughts that I had. And also, I think, like the introvert, be open to meeting people, because a lot of people go to a conference and they're very focused. They're going to meet this person. That's the person they want to meet. That's why they're going there. And that's important. You can do that. But that also reads. When you meet people, they know that that's kind of like the agenda. And and as Christy was saying,
You're the crazy card lady.
the crazy, it's like, okay. And then they kind of think, and usually the person that you meet, and sort of the same everywhere, it could be an airplane, or the person sitting next to you is oftentimes the most important person that you'll meet in many of those relationships in your life, and for sure in your business. So I think it's important to not sort of just be focused on your own agenda, but be open to meeting the other people at the conference. And the last thing I would say is that there's sort of talk about this a lot in Silicon Valley and investing with pattern recognition. But I think pattern recognition also works at conferences, because you go to conferences and after a while you see some people and you feel like, well, we are really like-minded. We should start talking. And you start these connections that may take years to pay off and may have value as referrers, but they really do connect because you feel like this person really is passionate about the same thing and is putting in the time and the energy, and you start those conversations.
Thank you.
I think the only thing I want to add to that is I think the most important thing that was said is it's not about the money and the agenda. The most important clients I've met have been sitting next to me on a plane or a train, and I attend thousands of conferences every year. But the people that you meet can be at the day spa, and it's because we do business with people we like. So when you let go of the agenda and being the crazy card person, and you're just there connecting and talking to someone and getting to know them and having a cup of coffee, for me, those have become the meaningful relationships because I stayed in touch and followed up with them.
And I think Liz also made a good point in going to something that you don't usually go to, like picking the Bitcoin kind of thing. So like I'm in the world of social media people, and we often go to social media conferences where we just keep talking to each other all the time. So if you're looking to make connections to make business, it's much better to go to something completely out of your own sphere or an industry that you're interested in or something like that. So try and get out of your own box as much as you can. The next thing that I would like to go on to is writing. So on writing, Deborah had mentioned LinkedIn. think everybody here really believes in LinkedIn. It's one of the really important things that you should do at a conference. You've met somebody in person. A lot of people will never link to somebody that they haven't met in person. But I always say at the end of meeting somebody, do you mind if I connect to you on LinkedIn if I'm really interested in connecting to them? And that's when you get the permission to go ahead and build that important network. Julie is and Kirsty on this panel are our highest clout people. So anybody know what clout is with a K?
Oh,
Okay,
wow,
so
more
it's an
than
influencer score, and you think it doesn't matter, but brands look at it. A lot of it's in the Hootsuite thing in your bio, whether you like it or not. So it's something that's worth paying attention to. And so I'd like Julie to talk for a moment about staying up to date on your social posting and how she does that.
It's exhausting. It's a time suck, and it's worth every inch and every penny of it. When you're building a brand, it's your personality, and your personality in LinkedIn is going to be very different than your personality, let's say, on Twitter. I mean, on LinkedIn, I have a very sort of serious resume-like profile, but I'm using all of the bells and whistles available, such as videos of any kind of television appearances or any specially produced videos, just to make it more multimedia and lively and create a little bit more personality. And when I hear from people on LinkedIn, it's a business to business model. They contact me. They want me to consult their business on how to improve their business. It's not about the love and flirty stuff I do on Twitter. So I think that social media is really important. And then when I'm on Twitter, yes, it's very fun and flirty, and I tweet under my name, even though I have several other accounts. And the reason is we keep reinventing ourselves over and over and over again. And when I started in broadcasting years ago, and it was my dream to be nothing other than a rock and roll DJ on the radio, no one would have told me that 30 years later, I'd be a cyber dating expert. So we were going to continue to change, what we do. And that's why I'm very, very, very strong about using your own personal name. Cloud. What can I say about Cloud? Cloud has brought me a bunch of really fabulous endorsements as a spokesperson for major brands, such as Clorox, $1 billion brand. I was a spokesperson for Clorox for flu season. We're talking Spokio, People Search Site, Cupid, and brand ambassador for Match.com. I can go on and on and on. But what happens is years and years of building up the social media presence through these multiple channels of Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. And if you have time, you can add in Vine and whatever else. It all comes together and it becomes this cloud score. The cloud score I've had is 81. So I rank number one in my keywords of dating and online dating. And because of that, I'm able to go back to these brands that come to me and say, we'd like you to be our spokesperson. And I'm able to really sit down and heavily negotiate a really, really terrific deal. So what we do in social, as exhausting as it is, we're engaging with other people that we like. We're finding like-minded people. I had an agent that actually signed me for a literary agent who found me on Twitter. This would have never happened years ago. So I'm a huge, huge fan of using social to elevate your brand.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the two things I would add in terms of social media and networking when we combine it is one, if you think about going to a networking event, traditional networking event, you're going to spend 3 hours getting up, having a shave, getting in the car, being there, networking, getting home. That's not even including following up and doing something with all the leads. When we look at social media, it's on average 10, 20 minutes a day. I can manage 25,000 relationships across 6 different platforms. Literally one post, 10 minutes out. So yes, you can do more, but that's like as a base minimum, it still, has more power than all the time I would spend going out in traditional ways. And the second thing is we were talking about before is targeting influencers. So last week we had Kelly Osbourne tweet us. We've had Oprah retweet us. Those sorts of things are far more useful than me spending 50 hours tweeting 100 different people that might have a clout score of 20 or 100 followers. So for us, it's about being strategic with the time that we are putting into our online world and not doing everything. I mean, Vine I looked at, it wasn't really for us. So what works well for me is Twitter is our number one that leads to views on YouTube. And then it's Facebook, and then it's Instagram. So I spend the time and prioritize it in that order.
And in your case, your personal brand and your company are the same account.
Yeah.
Like Julie's.
Kirsty TV
So-
is me, it is the TV show. So it's one brand.
So for the entrepreneurs in the room, we're not ignoring the company Twitter, the company social accounts as well. I mean, it can be like the way Kirsty is doing it, but everything that we're talking about that works for your personal brand works for your company brand as well. You need to be on social.
You know, I
media
think
with
it's
your
really
company as well.
important, you know, just to follow up on what I was saying earlier is when you're on Twitter and you're engaging with other people and they may be much more influential than you and you may think, well, they're never going to notice me. The fact is you need to act interested rather than interesting. So the more you talk about yourself, the less interesting you really become. So the more you can be interested in, let's say, a TV segment that you saw on the Today Show, and you just give a shout out to the host or whoever the guest may be, you'll be surprised when suddenly you'll see that they're going to favorite your tweet and they may reach out to you again.
I was just also going to say that, I mean, cloud is really a result of the work that you're doing on the other channels in many ways. So it's not difficult to use cloud to see whether or not what you're doing is actually, and what you're being represented for is actually connected to your brand, and to see if you want to increase or enhance certain channels that are allowing your cloud score to rise.
Right.
I would just say that it's very different as far as having your company brand and your own personal brand. I mean, they should have the same feel and all of that, but with your company, it may be that the company is selling, for instance, you know, action figures, female action figures. And so you're reaching out and talking to a different audience. Maybe it's moms, maybe it's, you know, a different faction. But then on your own personal one, maybe there are hobbies that you like, or like you'd mentioned, equine therapy, or, you know, helping others. So I think that oftentimes you do have separate websites, you do have separate names, you do have things, and it's just a different tone, and it's a different way that you're representing yourself and representing your company.
Yeah.
And that you just need to be aware and really plan out that strategy of how they come together, or don't.
Right.
They
And
should.
being aware of like
Be aware.
how the algorithms start to change and how that affects things as well. I started to notice on Facebook that you'd get notices when you post in a Facebook group. So for instance, to fill events or webinars, that kind of thing, it was easier to post in a Facebook group because they're automatically getting a notification in their ticker, rather than the events that you got invited to were all of a sudden disappearing. So it's just paying attention to little things that are being changed, and when stuff is being posted, and to just be being aware of how things are constantly, you know, moving on the back end, and how that's affecting what's being seen and where you need to be. And you know, and they're just great listening tools. Like I look at it as an awesome way to do research, you know, to have focus groups that you don't have to pay for. In the traditional days, we had to pay for research, and now we don't. We really have an ability to understand our audience, which is great.
How many people, who said they were an entrepreneur? And who's actually
Instagram.
selling like a product that has something, and who's doing like websites and putting content up online? Yeah, so a bit of a mixture. So that's the thing with the Facebook pages. I noticed that we had a Facebook fan page, a business page. And unless you actually have something you're selling, like web series, webinars, or something that has value, because you have to be paying for advertising now. Less than 6% of your reach will see. So if you have 1,000 likes on your fan page, only 6% of them will see what you're posting. So we were spending all this time and money creating these posts that no one's seeing, and we didn't have anything we were selling. We just want views for the channel. So I switched back to a personal page, and just now use the Kirsty Spraggan on Facebook. We still use both, but I can have 5,000 friends plus unlimited followers, so you can go up to like hundreds of thousands before it becomes a problem. And so if you don't have anything you're selling, you just want people seeing your posts and watching your videos, we found that we were getting way more engagement doing that.
Yeah, it really depends. It really depends what you're doing. I wanted to go to Dawn to talk about writing when something's important to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we've talked a lot about blogging and the power of kind of getting your content out. And I don't blog personally, but our company has a blog and we've written a lot. We started it when we launched the company. And I think that when there's a story, when my personal philosophy is you should only say something when you have something to say. And you should think really hard about what that thing is that you're going to say and tie it into larger messages, but that can also link back to your company. So as an example, I'm very passionate about the power of play. One of our taglines is it's time to play with power. Because as I said before, the stories we tell ourselves as children are incredibly important. And I think if we want to change the world, we have to start with how we play and what stories we tell ourselves. So for me, the company, the business, and the product are all linked together with this larger message. And I had one of the blog posts that will be coming up on our blog is about this origin story of the company. When we were getting ready to start, I had bought my 9-year-old daughter a Lego set, and it is a fabulously beautiful box, and it's like $85 with all these Legos, and she wanted it because it's a castle, and it comes with 5 figures, and she's super into Harry Potter. There's a wizard figure, a princess figure, and 3 knights. And my whole thing is on the picture, the girl is in the tower waiting to be saved by these 3 knights. And then there's the mean wizard. And not one of the knights, you got it, right? You got the punchline? Not one of the knights is a girl. And I think that's just such a lost opportunity. And to me, tying that back to the business, so what's that blog post about? That blog post is about how we market toys, how we think about the messages we send when we market them, how we distribute them, product placement, and a lot of the things I'd like to see and why we got into this business change about how we think about the power of play. So that's a blog post, but I also see it as an op-ed piece. And I don't know if anybody knows the op-ed project with Katie Orenstein, but they do a great job, particularly with women, encouraging women to think about writing in a targeted way that is designed to get your opinion out there in an editorial fashion to change the conversation. And I think when you have kind of a thought about what you're going to write or what you're going to say, kind of spin it out just a little bit further. Think at the national, at the international level. What's the larger message? What are you really what change are you really trying to affect? Lead your content towards action, lead your reader towards action. And the action isn't just follow me, like me, tweet me. It's I want you to take a larger action, because that's how people get engaged, and that's when they share, because this process of sharing says something about them. So I think kind of take all your content, particularly those longer form blog posts. You're doing it for a reason, because you have a message to get across, and tie that message to action, and action that you're truly passionate about, because that will come back to you and it will come across.
And in your case, related to your business.
And it's, it's 100% related to our business, but in a more tangential way. It's related to the larger message of the business.
Great. Julie, I'd like to talk about Reels now. So if you could start, and then I want to go to Kirsty about creating your sizzle reel, which could be for your personal brand or your company. All companies also need Reels.
Okay. So we're going to talk about sizzle reels. Okay. We all know that video is everything. Many of you have been here and you've gone to some of the YouTube sessions and so forth. But creating video is so easy right now. And I mean, it's just as easy as taking your phone and starting shooting pictures of each other or of us on the panel or whatever. But one of the most important things is what do you look like, and what's your message, and how do you get it across, in a minute, 30 seconds. And so I have a sizzle reel for both businesses that basically, one is for social media more, and it's, why do you need a social media marketing plan? And the other one is just, it's a love related one, and it's just a bunch of news clips. And they're on my website, they're on my LinkedIn profile, there are links to them from they're on my Facebook pages. And the fact is, you need to have your personality come out and pop. So we can all be 2-dimensional photos, and it's great to be on Instagram. But at the end of the day, we want to hear what you sound like, what you look like. We want to have this connection with you. And there's nothing better to do that with than by using a video that's a sizzle reel for your business.
Kirsty's produced a couple of sizzle reels, so I'd like you to comment on that, please.
Yeah, so I agree. I think no matter what business you're in, you should have a sizzle reel. If I was back selling houses, I'd have one for real estate. But I have a motivational speaking one, and I have a TV one for the TV show. And it just means that I can send something that in a very quick way, in under 2 minutes, people can watch it and know what is the vision for this show. So we can send it to networks, we can send it to potential sponsors who want to align and partner with us. I can send it out to even new viewers. And same with the speaking. People want to know, how am I on stage? What sort of energy does she have? So no matter what your business is, you have to look at, well, what is this designed to show them? And I think the first thing is credibility. So yes, news articles, anything that you've written in magazines, you can have screenshots placed in within the video. Get a great editor. I mean, I've had lots of sizzle reels over the years, and it's like business cards. You look at your first ones and go, what was I thinking? So get a really good editor who's not just great at editing, but who's great at storytelling. Look through all the footage you have. He could have spent a week on it, which would have cost me a fortune, but I saved some of the time by looking through the 20 hours of footage and being clear about what minutes I thought would work really well. So you can help with some of the mapping out. But yeah, I think that a sizzle reel is probably the first thing I would invest in above a business card or a flyer nowadays. I think it's really key, and I use it on a daily basis, probably multiple times we send it out.
On ingredients for that sizzle reel, one of the things, if we're lucky enough to get invited to appear on TV, those are pieces that we really want to get on our sizzle reel. And Julie has done a magnificent job of creating herself as the cyber dating expert. So when TV news stations have some reason that they're talking about dating, they call Julie. So she's done a really great job of that, but there's a way to prepare too.
Right.
So could you talk about that for a moment?
Sure, and I'll start by saying my media sizzle reel is on my homepage. So if the media does contact me, they will look at the sizzle reel and they'll say, oh, okay, she can be on TV, she can talk. She's an author that actually, can talk. But the most important thing I would say is, you're talking about how the media reaches me. I had a really solid content strategy when I started both the brands. And with the content strategy, I had an editorial calendar, and I was very, very precise about my keywords and my SEO, and I studied up on SEO morning, noon, and night as a marketing person. And as a result of having a constant flow of content in my area of expertise, or the area that the media thought I was an expert in at least, what happened is Google started giving me the Google love, and I ended up very happily being #1 in my keywords for the 2 books I wrote. So I'm #1 in the keywords for online dating experts. So, if some tragedy happens or something good happens, or if it's Valentine's Day, the media will say very last minute, oh my gosh, I need an online dating expert, Google, let's call Julie. So the phone tends to ring, and the media tends to be very heavily inbound. I found the same thing with my second book, which isn't even out yet, but I ranked #1 in the keywords of netiquette expert because I was the only one writing about netiquette. And when the media wanted an expert in the topic, the first place they go to is Google. So I think it's really, really important. The only way you're going to show up and rank really well in Google is by making sure that you have great content, a very constant updating of content, and be unique in your personality. Make sure you have at least 350 words in any article that you write so it is indexed properly by Google. And just sort of make sure that you're sharing other people's content. Another interesting strategy is if you're too tired and you don't have enough time to write the way I write almost every day, is look at your previous articles and then just start to write upon that particular article and do several links back to your other articles within the site. Google loves it when you're linking back to other articles within your site, and it helps keep your rank up.
Deborah, could you talk about preparing for going on TV? You've been invited on a lot of TV shows, and developing your talking points and that kind of thing, what you've learned from experience on being on TV, on news.
Absolutely. I was invited to be on television quite a few times because I was the unusual one. But when I was 25 and I started my first tech company, a CD-ROM company for children, it was just so unusual for a woman to be in technology that I was getting all these oddity calls. So how old are you? You're a woman, you're in technology. And so I learned very quickly how to speak about the points that I really wanted to get across, but that people would want to know, and to be succinct, to try to connect, and, to be able to look people in the eye and them feel the energy or who I was, and to make sure that they would learn something or could find out something from me afterwards. So I have been doing a lot of speaking and a lot of things on television. This last time, again, an oddity, I was in the Santa Monica College shooting. So I was absolutely positively all over the press. And during a time when it was just the day after I got out of the hospital. So I can't say that I was prepared or looked very good, but it was certainly from the heart. And everything that I talked about was making sure that I answered what other people would want to know. So what would it be like to have that happen? But always, trying to make sure that I got across something of import to them, I would have to say.
I think the other thing is, I was at an event the other week. I opened the conference. They had 15 speakers during the day. The closing person was one of the top YouTubers on the planet. And there wasn't a single speaker other than myself who didn't stand behind the podium for their entire talk. So I think in terms of preparation, there's some very simple things. I could spend an hour with someone and have them off that podium. So research, find someone who can coach you and train you on whether it's on TV or whether it's speaking publicly, an hour or two with someone and you could get some really great tips, but you have to look the part. And particularly with a YouTuber of that level, going to have a best-selling book, you're going to start getting more and more press. So use those early opportunities to get the practice in.
Go ahead. I used a media coach when I first started doing television, and I thought I knew it all, and I didn't. I was just rambling on, and they really taught me how to really think and speak in sound bites. So everything you need to do needs to be 10 to 20 second, provocative sound bites that you can easily edit into a piece, and then they will call you back again.
Dawn,
I was just going to say, even if you don't have a media coach and have somebody videotape you asking questions, and it's shocking to see the verbal tics you have that you don't know you have. And you really should do that. And you should take it seriously with a trusted colleague or advisor or friend or partner. Write out a list of questions and do it a couple times, because it really does help. That is a muscle you build up, and you want to eradicate those tics from your voice and from the way you hold yourself. And that's a very simple one. Picking your clothes carefully. I mean, there's a lot of things you can find online, but just the process of recording yourself and also taking a note from the politicians, which is you don't have to answer the question that was asked. You can answer basically anything you want. It's like, the first response is, that's a great question. That makes me think about when my dog was walking down the street and we've, decided that we were going to stop this fire hydrant because I think it's so important that we have fire safety in this country. And so you can link anything back. If you know your sound bites, you just make sure you get them in at every point, and every question is an opportunity for a sound bite. And all you're doing in your head is like, which sound bite is this most relevant for? And just get to sound bite as quickly as possible.
And they also say that rehearsing in front of a mirror, which I think is important. And this year I curated 26 speakers for TEDx Hollywood that I co-produced. And it was one of the tips that we got, which is sort of a little bit about all this, is that, begin with the end in mind. Start with what is the point you want to make, and then you can work backwards into sound bites and your entire conversation.
And an interview is different than a speech.
Yeah, I was just
so
there's
media interviewing you that's going to be on TV, and then you're giving a speech, and you address those two things slightly differently.
But also, Dawn, I know I've been on the other side where I've interviewed someone and literally all they did was get across what they didn't answer the questions I'm asking. And so I would never have them on again, ever.
No, it's a good point.
And so that's the thing you have to be careful of. If you go down that path and you're not then authentic, they weren't present, they weren't in the moment with me, they weren't real, because all they wanted to say was what their agenda was. It was very clear. we had to cut the interview down from 30 minutes to 8 just to get something decent out of it that made sense. And as I said, I would never have them on again. And I've told so many people about that.
Right.
So if you want recurring publicity, you also have to, which I know you do, is add value and make sure that there is some relevancy to what you're linking and segueing to.
Yeah.
You have to make sure they're not sweating, that the person who's interviewing you isn't going, oh my goodness, this person isn't going to talk,
Yeah.
or they're not
Yeah.
following my question.
It's
or,
okay if you don't answer the questions if you give them good content. If they get good TV out of you,
Yeah.
they're going to be happy. And if you are connected to bigger themes, that is what's really relevant, because that then they can reference when they do a later piece, I think.
And there's so much video out there that you can just watch online to get a sense of who you want to emulate, as well as really just stepping into who you are in your own unique voice. Practice with anyone and everyone. And there's tons of great training programs like Toastmasters, as well as, others that you can find online that are really helpful.
So Kate and Kirsty have appeared at a TEDx and talked about that in a prior panel that we had, and how great it was for them. And speaking, getting a lot of speaking engagements is really great for your personal brand and for bringing up the awareness for your company as well. Liz, you said that you were working on TEDx Hollywood. How do you get in?
How do you become a
How
TED
do you
speaker?
get to be a speaker at your TEDx? How did they get to you?
Well, we had themes, which I felt were actually a little bit more narrow than we articulated it. I think a little more narrow than we should have, and ultimately we opened that to the idea of broadened it basically, and so people applied, and then we had a pretty rigorous sort of conversation with them about whether or not they were willing to basically put in the work that it takes to really deliver a talk, and that the idea was compelling and not a sales pitch. Those were sort of the criteria. And then we helped them all the way along if they needed it. And so in terms of coaching or just thinking through the conversation, making sure they sort of landed the plane, I guess.
So people can look at the list of TEDx's that are in Los Angeles and pick, I want to try Malibu, Santa Monica,
Sure.
whatever,
They
and
can-
then
they
and then
apply.
there's a contact person and
And then they apply with a sort of it's very in Ted's case it's very specific actually how you apply, with an outline, and then that's reviewed by whoever. It could be an individual or a committee depending on who's organizing the TEDx, and then they decide, and then they call you, and you sort of have that conversation.
Having been the person who books speakers too for Fortune and Fast Company, tying it back to what my colleagues were saying earlier, the first thing they're going to do is Google you. So if you have a good personal brand and you're in places that seem relevant, that's going to immediately help. So putting that time in does really help, because the very first thing, and this is the first thing a writer does, everybody starts with Google. So Google, which everybody does, Google it yourself and know what happens, but that's where they're going to start. So if you see something, you don't want
own
to-
your name,
Yeah.
your name everywhere.
Yeah.
At
So
least
buy
then
up
you
all
come
the
up.
domains
Twitter,
for
Facebook.
have a website with your name, have all the social channels with you. Grab it even if you don't want to use it right now, so that you're going to pop up when they Google you.
Yeah.
Right. I want to hit one more thing, but because we're going to have to go to questions, and that was how to do a press release. We have Marina here, who's from Business Wire and very excited about us talking about press releases also. So Dawn did this amazing job with press releases for I Am Elemental. And she also displays it really nicely on her website. So if you do get press, take advantage of putting it up so that it's nice and big. Oh, great. I just lost my connection. But it's so that it looks nice and big.
Yeah, tweet
And,
it, Facebook it, mention it everywhere.
And mention it everywhere. So the site,
So that's at
And this is what you wanna-
imelemental.com.
iamelemental.com /news.
And that's
That's
our
where she
press
has
page.
all her press. So she's going to explain how she got this.
I'm just going to give a couple of the tips that we learned through doing Kickstarter. One is don't ignore the traditional process. We talked all about social media, but write a real big girl, big boy press release and post it on the traditional wires. They do pay off. People follow them. Having worked in media, the dirty little secret is everybody needs content. So people are looking for content. They follow these feeds for a reason, and it's worth the investment. It makes you look big because it says I'm taking my content seriously, and a lot of outlets will pull it. The other one is targeted messages for particular journalists. Then you have national press, but then there's local, there's specific, industry-specific press, there's bloggers, and breaking your audience. For us, we have 3 distinct audiences. We have collectors who write a lot about the things they love. So, and everybody, there's always a fan community, I like to say, in every industry. Find your fans, the people who are very passionate about it, who are sneezers, who are kind of totally into that thing and spend a lot of time talking about it. So we have collectors who are all about action figures. We have moms and dads. We were actually surprised how many dad bloggers were really big for us, and we got a huge amount of hit. And then we had kind of what I would call the girl power feminist press, people who are interested in changing the role of women in the world. And that comes in a lot of different flavors. But small media are, one of our biggest pickups was we ran something, our first press release went on PR Newswire, a local New York City blog that is just for the Upper West Side of Manhattan called DNA Info. We sat down and we had coffee with the person. The next day, Bloomberg News called, and my business partner was on Bloomberg Television, because people read those small blogs because that's where they find content. And another dirty little secret of the big national media is that the people who do all of the searching for stories, or most of the people, are like 12. They're like 20 years old. They're just out of college. They're interns. And don't blow off an intern. Give them good content if they call you, because even if they're just writing for the .com, then we were profiled on time.com, and now Time Magazine has called us for a piece in the national print publication. So these are all feeders for other things. So really, to spend, if you can only get attention from the small people, don't think that that's not going to pay off, because it will. People will read it, and you can blog that out, and also do their job for them. When they call you or when you write them, write the story for them based on knowledge of what they actually write about. Jane, I so enjoyed your last piece on Goldie Blocks, which is a great girl empowerment toy. I wish you would take a look at our toy. And we think our message is different because, so it's not just, oh, you wrote this, we're just like them, you should write about me. It's, I'm going to tell you why it's different so that you don't have to think about how this will fit in my portfolio of work. It's different because here's the storyline. Women-owned toy companies starting companies on Kickstarter because the toy industry is a closed industry and we can't enter in another way. So it's kind of doing that work for them, taking it one step further, I think is very helpful.
Julie, can you just do really quick on why you shouldn't do a free press release?
Years ago, when I first started, I was a big fan of the free press releases, and I was probably sending out a press release once or twice a month when I was hosting a radio show for each guest. And it was very strategic, and in the beginning, it really worked well. And that was up until recently when Matt Cutts, who's the CEO guru over at Google, started talking about how Google was actually, really disqualifying. You were getting dinged if you were doing too many of these free press releases. It really was turning out as spammy, and it was actually hurting people's ranks. Now, I know Serena's here. We're giving another little plug to Serena, but the fact is, if I have something really important to say, and I have a launch, and I have a product launch, or I have a big campaign, or I'm about to go on tour or something, I will invest the extra money in doing a real sophisticated press release. Because what I've found is the free press releases, they just, they don't go anywhere. No media picks them up. You can stick them on your website. And if you stick those links on your website, Google doesn't love you as much. So think twice about how often you do a press release. The other thing I like to do is build a media list. And if I have a press release that's going out, I don't pay anything. And I just email the release as a media alert to whomever I think that, would benefit from hearing whatever launch I have to talk about. And that seems to be working well right now under the current algorithm situation.
The other thing I just want to add is when we spent a lot of time before we launched our company reading in our industry of people who wrote about things like us. And so we did individual, I probably did over 200 personalized emails to bloggers and press that said just what I said before. I really enjoyed the pieces, or if I knew the piece or pieces you wrote over the last year, or I love your blog and I particularly like this piece. Like that took me a long time, and it was really well worth it because those were much better responded to than just a blanket. It said, I actually have followed you and read you, and everybody has an ego, and writers like to know that you actually read them. Because it's one thing to be like, here's my thing, my link, I'm clearly sending it all in the BCC field versus 200 individual emails. And that really does that time in. There's no other way to say it when you're an entrepreneur. You have to be willing to put the time in.
And
Deborah, I know you want to talk about the press release thing, but I also want to cover one last thing that I wanted mostly from you, so you can flip it as quickly as you can, which is about causes. So Deborah, it represents I Have a Dream Foundation Los Angeles, and it is a cause, and she's looking at it from both sides. And so I'd really like you to talk about how companies can use contributing to causes as part of their branding.
Well, I think that you have to be very authentic. So if you have a company and you want to be involved with a cause, that it has to make sense for your company, for your employees, for who you stand for, what you stand for. And you can not just donate money or get on the board, although getting on the board of a nonprofit is a very good way to start meeting people, although there usually is a financial give if you're on the board of a nonprofit. But you can have mentors come out, so you can show your employees that it's really good to give back, and that helps with morale. It helps to associate with yourself with a cause, whether it's partial proceeds, again, mentoring, volunteering. All of those other things are very important. And it's become so important to, with Social Enterprise Network, there are investors everywhere and funds everywhere that want to invest in companies that are doing good. So you have B Corps, you have companies that are not only selling a product and they're for profit, but they're also making sure that they're doing good in society. And there's a tremendous amount of funding out there if you have a company that does both. So I wish we had time, because I'd love to be able to talk a little bit more about how you can, access that type of funding and have kind of a social enterprise, but you're welcome to ask me afterwards.
And don't be afraid to talk about it. So, I lived in Japan for 21 years, and the Japanese are great at giving away a lot of money and not telling anybody. So it's okay to let people know that you're doing good things. It's part of your branding. So, and just very quick one from Liz, who works with Tom's as a
Well, actually, I was
consultant.
just thinking about something that I tweeted last week at a conference that I was at called We First, which was about thinking about we over me. And the question was, how does your business become a powerful force for social change? And I think if you ask that question and you make sure it's part of your mission, and if you can from the DNA of when you start, then you're going to always be able to be authentic and powerful and passionate about the contribution that you make. And it's not just about having a campaign. It's about actually committing to the change that you want to make.
I think it's taking, again, your passion and distilling it back to action to and the change you want to see in the world, and having that be part of your message from the beginning, and really spending time thinking to yourself, why am I doing this? What's the bigger change? Is it personal, transformational growth? And I think that's important because I'm passionate about changing the way we think about play. The kind of what's the larger message, and tying that back also because it helps you get up every day to feel that you're trying to add
which is
something
why
to
we
the
talked about
conversation.
purpose and passion as part of our
Come
introductions.
nicely full circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well done.
There we are. Well, full circle, and 5 minutes for questions. I'm so sorry. Yes.
I'm just kind of starting out with the social media type things in terms of having a Twitter account and LinkedIn. How does one develop those connections on Twitter? If I have maybe like 50 kind of thing, how do we start following somebody and having people follow you? What's the best suggestion?
What business do you have?
I work as an actor.
Okay, so the first thing I would say is Twitter Adder. We are very targeted. So Twitter Adder allows you to follow 300 people per day. And we, with a TV show, an online show, we follow people with similar genres. So Oprah, Dr. Phil. So we target 300 people who are following Oprah. And then we might move on to someone else. And that way we're gathering them. We have it automatically set up. If they don't follow us back within 3 or 4 days, then we unfollow them. So we're only then following mutual people. So that's a quick way to grow numbers. And then
The service
Twitter
is
Adder.
Twitter Adder.
Twitter Adder.
ADDER.
ADDER, yeah. And the second thing that's been really great for us is having regular content. So we have a spreadsheet. I have over 100 episodes on the show now. We have a spreadsheet that every time we create a new episode, we create 5 to 10 tweets about that episode with hashtags specific. So if the episode's on addiction, we have hashtags around that, or depression. So then we're finding that people who are looking for those hashtags. So we have a spreadsheet now of about 2,000 tweets. We upload that through Hootsuite, which is another facilitated thing. And every 15 minutes, a tweet goes out. And we found that a lot of people would then start to engage with our content. And I just make sure that I'm regularly on there to retweet back, to then say, hey, thanks for following us, or it's really nice to have you here, and make sure that it's personalized.
I also recommend when you're getting started, Twitter chats are a really good way to do that. And after this, if you go to itsdifferentforgirls.com, and the 4 is the number 4, itsdifferentforgirls.com. We're going to get an archive of today. I'm going to put that up. I'm going to put everybody's bios up there so you have it all together, and I'm going to put resources. And one of the resources I'm going to give you is where to find Twitter chats. Okay, because if I throw out, you could Google it, but there's a couple of big spreadsheets so you want to find topics that are relevant to you. But the biggie that people can get started with is blog chat on Sundays at 6 p.m. PST. It's blog chat. And I'll also put up how to participate in a Twitter chat.
I'd also say have a point of view. Like, I think.
I'm sorry, which is it that you need?
No, that's okay. I just think in general, people can't write as fast as people talk, and we're not trained to record. So the big picture messages, some of the things I couldn't write as fast as y'all saying with such wisdom and passion, that I'm going to have to get your course just to ask you what you
Go
But
ahead.
also the great thing is they're
good luck if I
recording this,
remember.
and there is going to be an archive. And if you can just remember, it's differentforgirls.com with the number 4. I will have a link to everything, including resources and their bios and all of their social links so that you can get a hold of everybody.
I just want to go back to you and saying, I really think it's important that you have a point of view, even for your personal brand or whatever you do. One of the most influential articles I ever read back when I was at Fast Company is an article that Tom Peters wrote called A Brand Called You. And it's if you're going to tweet beyond just friends and family, kind of what's your point of view? What's the action you want people to take? What's the change you want to see in the world? What's your voice? What's your message? Are you about, finding interesting character, and it's all about character because you're an actor, the power of character, or whatever, whatever it is, have a point of view and say that point of view loudly and clearly so that people know what they're going to get when they go to you.com.
I think authenticity is key. And I think that we can all curate content and we can all retweet tweets and we can all just be sort of this automated machine. But at the end of the day, people want to connect with you as a live person that, a real person. Yeah. And I found like anytime I've ever written anything or posted a picture that said something about, I'm super excited to be doing this, or my gosh, I'm really feeling sad today when I heard about the death of Oscar de la Renta. It doesn't matter the fact that I can just post the link from his obituary and it would mean nothing. But when I can say that I feel sad about it because I had the opportunity to meet him once, suddenly I became a real person. So the more that you can show your authenticity, you will shine more and more people will really want to connect with you.
And I think there's a wonderful book called Make a Name for Yourself, which is really understanding yourself as a brand and what your values are, what you stand for, et cetera. So I recommend that. And I know Linda's going to
That's going to be on the blog post too. Yes.
Can I just add in one more thing? One thing that we've also seen, I work with a lot of brands and individuals who brand themselves. The other thing is don't forget to leverage your friends and family. Email them and say, I just put up a blog post in this article. Will you tweet it out for me? And pre-write tweets and social messages.
Yeah.
If you pre-write it and send it to your friends and family, they'll put it online and other people will see it. But people forget to pre-write that stuff for you. If you wrote me a tweet and said, Serena, tweet it, I'll tweet it. I don't have to do any work, just tweet it for you. Yeah.
She's at Serena.
The gentleman is
And you'll suddenly get 1,000 new followers.
Yes,
the gentleman back.
gentleman in the back.
So I'm founded a company about 3.5 years ago, and all the stuff that you're talking about, I've lived a lot of it. I appreciate it. It's great advice. I wanted to go back to timing of PR for a minute. So we were building a technology company, extremely complicated in what we did, and of course overestimated or underestimated the amount of time it would take to get that to market.
Yep.
And so we did PR early because I thought, well, we're going to get timing, we're going to build a brand as we launch, it'll be great. We were in Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Print, all these great places, right? We were thrilled about it, but we didn't get the product to market in time. And so that press was great and fantastic, but then kind of died because it wasn't timely anymore. So as entrepreneurs, can you talk about that? You guys are saying a lot of great things, but we only have so much time in the day, and there's also a step process in which these things need to happen. If you're not prepared for some of the things you're talking about, it doesn't do any good.
No, that's absolutely true. And you do have to be very careful if you've got a product, especially in technology, that you don't talk about it before you know you're going to be able to deliver it, because then the press won't come back when you want to talk about it next time, unless you have a very different angle on it or something like that. But that actually has happened to me with a toy company I ran. And when I was at Disney and I was running the press for them on different movies that released, and of course the CD-ROMs, we always had to be so very careful that we would tell the editors, why don't you wait? You try to get as close as you can. So why don't you wait? And then you try to make sure that you don't, you have them not print it if you possibly can. So then they know that you save them from, putting it out in print and you're not delivering. And then the next time you really are ready, you have another chance. So you're right, be careful.
And I think
And Dawn has the pre-order on her site.
Yeah, in terms of it's too late. So if you're looking for solutions, I think there's always going to be someone else that hasn't heard about it. I'm sure you weren't in every single paper. So targeting some others, or as they said, select 200 bloggers that are out there. And then, looking at a different angle is really going to be all that's going to get the others back.
I guess my point was, for entrepreneurs in the room, we spent a lot of time and money and effort that could have been spent places that were better.
Look, I say you throw a lot of shit at the wall and some of it's going to stick. I don't know if you can pre-plan, if you can kind of maneuver around not sometimes doing that. I do think part of the process, as Dawn was saying, when you've had 1, 2, 3 rebuilds or 3 children, you kind of get better at things as you go along. And so I think there's part of it that you're just not going to know. You're kind of picking up the threads, you're trying to figure it out. And
you can still go back to those
those
journalists though and come with a new angle or something different to say. Or if you're willing to talk about why you were late and why you missed the deadline, that's a really interesting story. I mean, I'm serious. Owning mistakes as a personal brand and talking about that, it can be very interesting in the journal. I mean, there was an article in the Times not too long ago, which my mother, of course, cut out and was like, when Kickstarters fail and they don't deliver on time. And I was like, thanks, Mom. But there's, I would go to that author. There's ways to spin it. And also go back to the same people, and the universe is big, and you'll get another kind of bite at that apple.
And I'm going to be old-fashioned about it and say, for people who have product companies, don't use the PR until you're ready. Don't talk about it until you've got it.
And I would say that be prepared for any kind of emergency. That is something worth your time. And I just started doing some talks on this with my friend about Armageddon. And so if you were to get a giant press hit and you weren't prepared, so if you're on a national television show and then Yahoo picks it up on your homepage and you're not prepared and you go down for a day and a half, that is millions of dollars worth of business you could have lost. So you need to think about every aspect of preparation. Then there's checklists for that. And so I would recommend that too.
And I think building a house, actually building a brand or building a business is like building a house. And the reason I say that is because it always takes longer and it always costs more.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it's now 12:05. Please come up and meet the speakers. I know Dawn's going to a plane, but you can
I'm here for
spend
a few minutes.
Okay, so please do come up.
Thank you to Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
The greatest facilitator. Run again.
Over here.
Hi, how are you? I think I saw you here. That was last time I saw you.